unidentified flying objects, UFO.
Yo, big science news this week. Apparently aliens are real.
Oh, shit.
Hello out there, everybody. Manny here at Area 503. And I hope you all have been well since our last video. Today I want to give you guys a condensed version of the last 3 years in mainstream media disclosure in about 90 minutes. So grab some popcorn, get a Coke, do whatever you gotta do. Just hang on, cause it's gonna be a fun ride. Let's start back in early October 2017. Tom DeLonge of the 90s rock band Blink-182 made a bombshell announcement about UFOs, and he had collected a veritable dream team of folks to help him.
On a sunny day in 2004 off the coast of San Diego, the USS Nimitz battle group encountered a technology beyond anything known on Earth, a mystery aircraft shaped like a 46-foot-long tic-tac that hovered and maneuvered for hours and defied the F-18s sent to intercept.
In a series of discrete tumbling maneuvers that seem to defy the laws of physics, the object takes a position directly behind the approaching F-18. The pilots capture gun camera footage and infrared imagery of the object, but are outmatched by a technology they've never seen. At one point, the object soars to 80,000 feet, hovers, then drops at supersonic speeds, coming to a full stop a mere 50 feet above the ocean, where it resumes hovering. Clearly, this is not an experimental U.S. aircraft. But whose is it?
The story was told by former Defense Department intelligence official Chris Mellon. An investigation by the Navy was hushed up. The only public mention was in a little-known aviation magazine read by pilots. Mellon says the incident illustrates the obvious, that higher-ups in the Defense Department know the technology is real and that it's not ours. Officially, the U.S. government says it stopped studying UFOs in 1969 when Project Blue Book was canceled. At the announcement event in Seattle, that version of history was challenged by a man who until a week ago worked directly under Secretary of Defense James Mattis.
For nearly the last decade, I ran a sensitive aerospace threat identification program focusing on unidentified aerial technologies. It was in this position I learned that the phenomena is indeed real.
Lou Elizondo operated at the highest levels of the DoD and collected UFO data, but quit to take a position with rock star Tom DeLonge and a team of other former government insiders, now on board with To the Stars Academy, a public benefit corporation unveiled Wednesday morning. Some of what was announced was nuanced. Elizondo's presence confirmed that UFOs are taken seriously within a small circle in government. Former Lockheed Skunk Works manager Steve Justice said he thinks UFO data could be incorporated into technology that could change the world. Chris Mellon mentioned the Tic Tac UFO to prod Congress into asking for a briefing on the hushed-up incident. Musician DeLonge used his panel of high-powered partners to draw attention to his project, which was also profiled in a film meant to inspire public participation.
The first transparent partnership of its kind between the fields of aerospace engineering, science, and cinematic entertainment. A collaboration with global citizens to explore the outer edges of conventional thinking, targeting the mysteries of the universe.
So remember these names: TTSA, Tom DeLonge, and Lou Elizondo. They are all going to be mentioned a lot in the upcoming years.
It was in this position I learned that the phenomena is indeed real.
Oh, Lou, you are completely full of crap. And you're a terrible actor, dude. Whew. Okay, anyhow. Shortly after TTSA's bombshell announcement, there was another UFO incident in the popular media. This time, it was a UFO tracked over Oregon. This UFO was tracked by multiple commercial airline pilots and ultimately ended up leading to a pair of F-15s from the Bigfoot Squadron being dispatched to investigate it. I spoke in detail about this UFO over Oregon in episode 63, so if you haven't gotten a chance to watch that one, check that video out when you're done here.
Over the West Coast last month. The Air Force, the FAA, individual pilots all agree that an unknown aircraft of some kind was traveling north above Oregon. What was the plane? Why was it there? And why can't we know for certain? Because nobody does at this point.
With all the corroboration, including the FAA and NORAD and pilots, we still have no idea what this aircraft was.
So what did it look like, did they say?
Well, all we know, it was a white aircraft. It had the same type of performance as a jet. It was flying at between 35,000 and 40,000 feet, where probably you fly all the time when you travel.
Commercial airliner, yeah.
And yeah, and so it looked like, but nobody could make out the type. So that does leave it a little bit questionable, as if it was an airliner or potentially a military aircraft. This did not have any communications, no transponders, and it was not really trackable on radar. They did not have a consistent primary return. So this had all three going for it. It basically wasn't there, aside from the pilots that literally were asked by Seattle Center to look outside and say, hey, is it there? And all of them did see it.
It wasn't very long after this when another bombshell was dropped on ufology. This time, it was a New York Times columnist named Leslie Kean who wrote an article exposing ATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program.
Project Blue Book ended in 1969. 4 decades later, we're learning about another government program that remained largely a secret. According to the New York Times, the program produced documents that described sightings of aircraft that seemed to move at very high velocities with no visible signs of propulsion, or that hovered with no apparent means of lift. Joining me now is Leslie Kean, one of the co-writers of that New York Times article and author of UFOs, Generals, Pilots, and Government Officials Go on the Record. Leslie, we appreciate you being here to talk to us about this. What more can you tell us about this Pentagon program? What did it find?
Well, the program has been in operation since 2007, and it's been secret until now. And it studied about 10 to 12 different incidences a year that involve a military aircraft encountering these objects that can't be explained. They move incredibly fast. They'll hover and take a sudden right-angle turn, incredible velocities that we could never withstand if any living creature was in them. So they observe behaviors that seem to be technology that we don't have on this planet. I mean, that's what we're stuck with.
What were they hoping to accomplish with this?
Well, I mean, Senator Harry Reid was behind the funding. He with a couple of colleagues, Senator Inouye and Senator Stevens, in 2007, 2009, he was able to get funding appropriated for the program, and it ended up being about $22 million, and they had contractors that helped do the research.
But this was kept a secret. I mean, nobody knew about this.
It was kept a secret.
Why?
And nobody even knew that the program existed. And in fact, lots of people in the Pentagon don't even know it exists. So it's barely been kept quiet because the information is very, very sensitive.
This article blew the lid off of ATIP, and it would be attributed to Lou Elizondo, who came out as the source and confirmed ATIP's existence.
That were by U.S. military personnel who have been reporting UFO sightings for decades.
So look at that thing. It's rotated.
This is one of the incidents the Pentagon's secretive group of UFO hunters investigated.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh.
This object appeared off the California coast in 2004 and baffled 2 Navy pilots.
It's not a drone. It's not something that we can easily say, oh, that's an airplane.
Luis Elizondo ran the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program at the Defense Department. He believes the way that school bus-sized object moved defied the known laws of physics.
What we are looking at is truly beyond next-generation technologies.
Former Nevada Senator Harry Reid championed the UFO program, and some of the funding reportedly went to one of his donors, Robert Bigelow, founder of the military contractor Bigelow Aerospace. The Las Vegas tycoon spoke with 60 Minutes in May.
Do you imagine that in our space travels we will encounter other forms of intelligent life?
You don't have to go anywhere.
You can find it here.
Yeah.
Where exactly?
It's just like right under people's noses. Oh my gosh. Wow.
I think this is a national security imperative. We have clear things that we do not understand how they work, operating in areas that we can't control.
Elizondo refused to tell us how many cases his former group investigated, saying that information was sensitive.
Once Elizondo came out and started making the talk show circuit rounds, everybody began talking about this stuff.
We're talking about unidentified flying objects, UFOs.
The mystery into whether or not we're alone in the universe has been a constant question for over 6 decades, and it looks like the Defense Department wanted some answers.
So up next, you probably thought this was fiction.
Can you say E.T.? E.T. 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 E.T.
It all happens at the Pentagon.
Yes or
so
no, because I gotta
there.
go. Do you believe in UFOs, Richard?
UFOs? Maybe there's UFOs.
Maybe,
if you're
Charlie,
about
I gotta go 2 seconds.
This is such a slow phase. Of course I do. They're unidentified flying objects.
So then this
I see them all the time.
This is a good investment.
According to the New York Times, the Pentagon had a secret program that investigated reports of UFO sightings at the request of former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. I'm guessing because he had suspicions about his colleagues. I am a human senator from the human state of Texas.
See, even the late-night talk shows were covering it. This made some of the other witnesses of the sightings come forward as well, like Dave Fravor, who was a witness to the Tic Tac UFO.
We are back with that newly revealed UFO program at the Pentagon. The government has spent millions of dollars investigating UFOs like this one right there. It was spotted by Navy pilots. And Nick Watt has a closer look at the program.
Just one of many alleged sightings investigated by the secret $22 million UFO unit run from the Pentagon. There's another, what pilots describe as a 40-foot-long Tic Tac, 100 miles off the California coast.
I have never seen anything in my life that had the performance, the acceleration. Keep in mind, this thing had no wings.
Commander David Fravor was piloting an FA-18 on a training mission that day in 2004.
And it's moving around left, right, forward, back. The radar immediately starts getting jammed. All of a sudden, it takes off.
No aircraft that we know of can fly at those speeds, maneuver like that, and looks like that.
I think it was not from this world. I just know it was really impressive, really fast, and I would like to fly it.
The Pentagon telling ABC News the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program ended in the 2012 timeframe. It was determined there were other higher priority issues that merited funding.
People were even asking the White House to comment on the recent interest in the UFO phenomenon.
Finally tonight, while most questions at Tuesday's White House press briefing focused on the Republican tax plan, things took an otherworldly turn at one point.
Several media reports disclosed the existence of a secret Pentagon program that was researching UFOs. Funding ran out for that in 2012. Does the president believe in the existence of UFOs, and would he be interested in restoring funding for that program?
Somehow that question hasn't come up in our back and forth over the last couple days, but I will check into that and be happy to circle back.
So why does it seem everybody here in the United States is suddenly interested in UFOs and the secret government programs that investigate them? Perhaps it has something to do with this. A patent application filed in 2016, published November 2017. It's for a craft using an inertial mass reduction device. And who was this patent issued to? Why, the United States of America, as represented by the Secretary of the Navy. Hey there, wait a minute. That design looks awfully familiar. That's a damn TR3B. It's a legend. It's all over the internet. I thought so. The brothers over at ThirdPhaseOfMoon published viewer-submitted images of a similar craft back in 2016. Check this out.
Right, roll with it. Let's go. Let's get it on. Get the photos out. Multiple emails just into our Third Phase of Moon Gmail account of these photographs we're looking at right now all together, and this is coming from multiple sources. It's making the internet right now, and it's going to be breaking news tomorrow when everybody wakes up. So we got to get it out. We got to get it out right now. Brent is here. He's loading me the photos. We're getting close-ups of what looks to be, as the source is describing, an explosion, that TR3B explosion over Area 51. Well, okay, this is very, very intriguing information right now. And this photo is impressive. It has detail. This thing, it looks like it's showing its bottom part of its TR3B structure.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but that sure looks like a TR3B to me. Could that be a coincidence? Nah, I don't think so. So now the US Navy is filing for a patent for the same aircraft that they told us didn't exist and was a conspiracy theory and that we were crazy for believing in. Yeah, whatever, fellas. I suppose it's just a coincidence that the publication of this patent was less than a month before TTSA made their formal announcement and the media frenzy over UFOs started. It's all just one big coincidence, right? Wrong. I don't think so. Anyhow, since the cat was out of the bag, so to speak, other people like Chris Mellon felt comfortable coming out and speaking as well.
The evidence. Out front now, Chris Mellon, the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence. He is now working with Luis Elizondo, who ran that secret program. Thanks very much for taking the time tonight. So, Chris, I know you spent years investigating these unusual incidents. You heard former Senator Harry Reid speaking out about how important this program was. Can you tell our viewers what exactly did you discover?
Well, I think the best case that we can talk about publicly at this time, the most compelling evidence, which goes directly to the heart of your question, Jim, involves the Nimitz case in 2004. And what I think people need to understand about this, a few of the details. So, the USS Princeton is
to be clear, and we had the pilot on last night. This is an encounter, I think, off the Pacific coast, sort of a fast-moving object.
Correct. So what occurred was the carrier battle group was working up for an overseas deployment. Over a period of 2 weeks, there were numerous instances in which unidentified aircraft were approaching the carrier battle group, descending from over 80,000 feet at supersonic speeds, sometimes hovering, stopping at 20,000 feet, sometimes descending to 50 feet above the ocean. On November 14th, two F-18s that were aloft, which have two aviators each, were in close proximity and were vectored to the target, which was being tracked by the most advanced naval radar in the world, the Aegis-class Spy-1 radar, simultaneously being tracked by an airborne command post. These naval aviators who have drug clearances, top secret clearances and are drug tested and so forth, trained observers, observed the object, got as close as they could. It performed in a manner that exceeds anything we possess or even probably our understanding of aeronautics and physics at the present time.
And to be clear,
so we had multiple.
To be clear, when you see a sighting like this, you believe that the most likely explanation is that it therefore came from another world?
That's speculation. I think the thing that we need to do is get serious about finding answers. Speculation is cheap and easy. What we need is more hard data, and we need to approach this scientifically. What was so compelling about that incident was the multiple radar and other sensor system confirmation of what the pilots were reporting at the same time. So it's an open question, and that is the burning question. Where are these things coming from? How do they work? And what are their intentions?
Let me ask you this, because I'm sure you've talked to many skeptics, both inside and outside the Defense Department on this. You have a carrier group out there. I mean, isn't it equally likely, arguably more likely, that this could be some new technology that a U.S. adversary has, perhaps to monitor U.S. warplanes off the coast, that kind of thing? I mean, there are other explanations.
That's a great and natural question, Jim. I can tell you this, as a habit and as a rule, we don't test top secret aircraft in the vicinity of our own carrier battle groups, and we don't then try to intercept them and ask the pilots on board if they're carrying live ordnance.
Well, could it be, I mean, I'm just saying, could it be a Russia or a China or an adversary that is testing it around U.S. military equipment?
If it is, we sure need to know that and find that out. And that's all the more reason to get serious about that. That's a possibility because at this point we still don't know. What we do know is there is something very real there, and it is happening, and it's continuing to happen.
Well, listen, it's a remarkable story, and Chris, we appreciate you telling us the story.
My pleasure, and thank you all for giving airtime to an issue that until very recently it wasn't possible to talk about publicly. And I think that's an important first step, because until the public engages, we're really not going to make progress and headway. It's a democracy. People have to be invested and care about it for something like this to really be understood.
All right, you have a good night. Happy holidays.
Do you guys think that when Chris did this interview, he knew that just a month before that, a patent for a TR3B had been issued to the Secretary of the U.S. Navy? I bet he did. And I bet you old Lou Elizondo knew it as well, but hey, that's just my opinion. Anyhow, you'd think that with all this media attention, that everyone would be talking about UFOs, right? And they kind of were, but there was no real new information for a few weeks, and that was when Tom DeLonge and TTSA stunned us all once again with an amazing announcement.
San Diego may soon be ground zero for UFO research, sponsored by a millionaire rock star who grew up in Poway.
The former singer and guitarist for Blink-182 wants to fund research that's out of this world.
There is a theme. A lot of flying saucers in this place.
2 years ago, DeLonge invited our Las Vegas sister station, KLAS, inside his To the Stars gift shop in Encinitas. The store is packed with UFO merchandise and books on secret machines detailing how UFOs crashed on Earth during the 1940s. DeLonge says secret UFO information was given to him by Department of Defense insiders.
We found a life form. We found a life form. We found a life form.
Wow.
And then that conversation changed my life. And I was told there were crashes.
His new company, To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, has attracted so much media attention, the author, director, and musician is no longer doing interviews. He hired a team of experts from the aerospace industry and an intelligence officer who once ran a secret UFO program for the government.
It's probably the most important thing I've ever done in my life, even if it sounds like the tinfoil hat, little green men kind of conspiracy theory.
To the Stars Academy started out by releasing military videos of UFOs, which were recently declassified.
We're going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
One of the newly released UFO videos was recorded in 2004 off the coast of San Diego, and the Navy pilot who witnessed the flying object says he's never seen anything like it.
It's never been explained to me.
Not a drone, not a satellite.
Had no wings, no drone on IR, it has no plume, no exhaust, no nothing. It just did what it did.
DeLonge wants to raise up to $50 million through crowdfunding to launch entertainment, science, and aerospace divisions in his new company. He hopes to build a ship like this one that can warp through space and time. He also hopes to research brain-to-computer interface technology, human telepathy, and a laser beam that can launch satellites. He says he will release several UFO-themed movies and TV shows this year, and also plans to launch a website with a database cataloging all sorts of paranormal activities.
My end goal is to build a company that changes the world.
Yeah, right, pal. We know why you built TTSA.
We're not just doing this for money. We're doing it for a shitload of money.
Yup. Well, the good part about this is that the public gets a little bit of disclosure, so it's not all bad. And since TTSA and Lou Elizondo had already let the cat out of the bag, there was no reason any longer for anyone to keep silent. Heck, even Tucker Carlson was getting involved.
A large number of pilots and defense officials, a huge number, amazingly, think that there is actual real evidence that cannot be ignored that UFOs are entirely real. UFOs have captivated the public interest for decades, but they've always been dismissed, including by me, as the province of wackos. But that is changing thanks to some remarkable videotape and first-hand accounts from very sober people who are trained to identify aircraft.
Lou Elizondo is a former Pentagon official. He helped research UFOs. He said the DoD is not taking any of this seriously for some reason. Mr. Elizondo joins us tonight. Lou, good to see you.
That is correct. You're talking about individuals who have very high security clearances. They are trained observers. We've actually paid them and put them through schools to be trained and very keen observers to scrutinize what they're seeing. These are individuals who we trust to fly weapons platforms, sometimes with live munitions, over U.S. cities and to fight and win wars on our behalf. And they're reporting to us that they're seeing something that they can't explain, and it's also being backed up by the video evidence and the radar data and other witnesses.
But these must just be weather balloons, right?
Well, the weather balloons that are expressing technologies that are far beyond our current understanding of aerodynamics, things that are maneuvering in ways that no aircraft that we are currently aware of has that capability to. Flight performance characteristics that are well beyond the threshold of what we would consider I think normal or routine for aircraft.
So they have no flight surfaces, no wings or anything approaching a wing, and there's also no obvious propulsion. So infrared doesn't pick up any jet trail or rocket exhaust coming out of these things.
Right, or a plume. You know, there's many ways to have propulsion. You can do it with a jet engine, for example, right, a propeller, or a rocket engine. In this particular case, you have objects that are doing things, maneuvering in ways without any obvious sign of propulsion, and defying the natural effects of Earth's gravitational.
At what speeds?
Pull. Some are very, very, very fast.
Faster than our aircraft or non-aircraft?
Absolutely, hypersonic speeds. And by the way, without any obvious signs or signatures involved. So when an object's moving through the atmosphere, you would expect it to have certain signatures associated with that particular aircraft, whether it's a missile, drone, rocket. So for example, you might see a heat signature coming from it. You might see ionization of the atmosphere. Right. You might hear a sonic boom, which you normally would. It's an acoustic signature. In this particular case, these objects don't have any of those signatures.
So we know that they're not U.S. military because they wouldn't be flying near U.S. military aircraft as they so often have. And it seems like we would know if foreign countries had that technology. Look, I have no idea what it is. The bottom line is this is a potential threat, a grave one to our country. What is DoD doing about it?
Well, I can't speak on behalf of DoD right now because I'm no longer employed as a Department of Defense employee, but I can speak to what they were doing about it and what they weren't doing about it when I was part of the program. I think DoD is a very large, complex organization. I think it's very good at what it normally does, but in this particular case, we had a very ill-defined problem set. And so when you're going to the boss and you say, look, boss, we have something here, we don't know what it is, we sure don't know how it works, and by the way, there's nothing we can do about it. That is a very difficult conversation to have in an organization that is, its sole mission is national security,
it's
right?
I think it's terrifying. I mean, this seems potentially like one of the biggest stories of my lifetime, and I don't care if it's about UFOs or whatever you call it. Something that we don't understand is getting very close to our military aircraft, and the government isn't responding adequately, and I hope you keep sounding the alarm on this.
Yeah, I think, if I may, just very quickly.
We got 10 seconds.
Okay, you go to the metro, you see a sign, see something, say something, and we get an attaboy for reporting it. In this particular case, these pilots who are seeing something and is backed up by other data, it's nothing.
It's terrifying. That's the essence of dysfunction. Lou, thank you for that. I hope you'll come back.
I'm sure Lou isn't going anywhere. He has planted himself right in the middle of ufology. So I'd expect we're going to see him on the convention circuit soon, once the talk shows stop calling. Anyhow, the rest of 2018 was fairly quiet after the mainstream media had its fun with UFOs and went back to more commercial topics. That just left the true diehards like me and my buddy Richie Gufon sitting around talking about the recent bombshell announcements and wondering why everybody wasn't talking about this stuff. Things were surprisingly quiet, but then at the beginning of 2019, things began to heat up once again.
Top secret Pentagon research projects have long been the stuff of conspiracy theories. But some of them are real. They actually happened, and they're worth knowing about. For example, this week, in response to a Freedom of Information Act request, the Defense Intelligence Agency disclosed that it had, in fact, funded research into UFO-related technologies. This would include the invisibility cloak, warp drives, and anti-gravity. The DIA spent $22 million from 2007 to 2005. The program apparently was initiated by then Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid of Nevada. Nick Pope is one of the world's experts in this. He wants to investigate UFOs for the British government. He joins us tonight. Nick, thanks for coming on. It does sound like the core assumption of this research was that UFOs are real.
Yes, it really does. This is something of a bombshell, I think. For months, the Defense Intelligence Agency and the DoD have been trying to spin this story as, well, it's just about advanced aerospace weapons threats. But now we have this document which shows quite clearly what they were looking into, and it's nothing to do with airplanes. It's as you say, anti-gravity, invisibility, cloaking, wormholes, and warp drive. Some of this is about space travel.
These ideas are derived from objects that the U.S. government observed in space, presumably?
Well, we still don't know much of the story. We really only have a handful of papers and documents on this. I got this from the DIA's Office of Corporate Communications, and we're still trying to digest what this means. There are 38 papers that they produced under this contract. Defense intelligence reference documents, looking at things which frankly sound like science fiction, and yet they're not. Our tax dollars have been spent on looking at this, and you know there's one of these papers which absolutely is critical. It's looking at something called the Drake equation, and the Drake equation is supposed to be a way that astronomers can calculate how many intelligent civilizations there might be in our galaxy. Well, look, if this is not a UFO program, if this is just about Russian and Chinese aircraft, what the heck are they looking at that for?
Why wouldn't the U.S. government just say, I don't think it'd be especially controversial, we believe it's possible that there are other forms of life in the universe and we're looking into it. Why hide that?
Well, I hope that's exactly what they will now say. I think we know that this letter, which I've now acquired and which has been released under the Freedom of Information Act, we know that this went to Congress. We know that the Armed Services Committee is looking at this very seriously. They're also looking into those videos that we've talked about before of the Navy jets chasing UFOs. So I think the real question is what's going on behind the scenes? And I'm hoping that in the next few weeks, maybe months, Congress is going to say more about this. The Armed Services Committee will speak out, and maybe we'll have public hearings at which all this will be revealed.
So former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, who was for many years in a position to have access to this information for certain, has basically said in public, I know a lot, I think this is real, but he hasn't gone farther than that. Have you spoken to him? Has anyone spoken to him?
I've not spoken to him personally, but I've seen some of his interviews. I've seen his statements. I've seen one of his documents. And for anyone who's trying to say, well, this isn't really about UFOs, it's about next generation aircraft, missiles, and drones. No, it isn't. Harry Reid has made it perfectly clear this is about anomalous objects in our airspace, and call them UFOs, whatever you like. You know, we take them seriously. The government has been looking at this.
Why all the lying? That's what piques my interest. It always piques my interest. Nick Pope, thank you for all the work you do on this. The non-crazy, sober, responsible work you do, and I appreciate it. Well, that's it for us tonight. And let me just say, there is an awful lot of lying, and none of it happens by accident. All lying in Washington is designed for the benefit of the people telling the lies, and it's a tantalizing clue that we got to press a little more, and so we will.
Some additional documents had come out that showed that the DoD was actually researching things like warp drives, anti-gravity, invisibility cloaking, and traversable wormholes. That goes far beyond identifying unknown aircraft. What the heck were these guys up to? And what do you think the Pentagon would do if they discovered and refined such technology? Do you think they would publicly announce it for the benefit of all mankind? Or do you think that they would use it secretly and then quietly patent it once they were forced to reveal its existence? Possibly like they did with the TR3B. I wonder just how many patents the Secretary of the Navy holds anyways. Holy moly, 14,488 patents? What could all of those patents possibly be for? Wow. I guess I'm going to have to start going through them one at a time to find out. By the way, if any of you want to help me dig through all those patents, email me at realarea503@gmail.com. I could use an extra pair of eyes on this one. Anyhow, it should be no surprise that the rest of the world was warming up to the United States UFO issue. The Russian government propaganda news channel Russia Today decided to chime in on the subject, informing Russian Americans how to think on the subject.
Director of the Federation of American Scientists Project on Government Secrecy, Stephen Aftergood, filed a Freedom of Information Act, or FOIA request, on August 15, 2018, asking for a copy of the list that was given to Congress on all U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency products created under the Advanced Aerospace Threat and Identification Program contract. The Defense Intelligence Agency just issued their response, and it's a doozy. They found one 5-page document dated January 9th, 2018, that matched the request and provided it to Mr. Aftergood. It's a letter from the DIA to John McCain and Harry Reid. It states the purpose of the Advanced Aerospace Threat and Identification Program, which is to investigate foreign advanced aerospace weapon threats from the present and out through the next 40 years. And then it lists all the reports generated in the program. There are 38. Many sound like what you might think the Defense Intelligence Agency would research when considering what threats other countries might pose in space over the next 40 years. Some of the reports have names like advanced nuclear propulsion for manned deep space missions, pulsed high-power microwave technology, space access, field effects on biological tissues, and state-of-the-art and evolution of high-energy laser weapons. Again, crazy sounding, but still stuff you'd expect. And then there are reports with much more interesting titles. Invisibility cloaking was one of them. So was traversable wormholes, stargates and negative energy, and warp drive, dark energy, and the manipulation of extra dimensions. It also lists a report entitled An Introduction to the Statistical Drake Equation, which deals with estimating the number of active, communicative, extraterrestrial civilizations in the Milky Way. That's right, in addition to studying cutting-edge engineering, the Defense Intelligence Agency also studied how many aliens there might be out there in our galaxy, making it sound like the foreign threats they're watching out for might not all be from planet Earth. So, it's good that we're studying extra dimensions and wormholes, because it'd be great if we could hightail it off this planet quickly, if there are really ill-intended aliens out there. I think it's great we're thinking about all this stuff personally. Except for that invisibility cloaking thing. That one has me a little worried, because if our defense is to throw an invisibility cloak over the planet and hope for the best, then we might as well start waving the white flag of surrender right now.
So Russia is telling the whole world, hey, we saw that. It turns out that ATIP and Lou Elizondo were involved in a bit more than just investigating UFOs. They were also secretly studying the application of advanced technology. They were funneling research studies off to some unknown company. This is some far out there stuff. It sounds almost like a version of Colonel Corso's story in The Day After Roswell. Maybe he was telling some version of the truth all those years ago. Anyhow, it seems that all this public discussion of the UFO phenomenon and the revelation of the secret programs at ATIP finally got the attention of the DoD, who took an official stance in April of 2019.
The U.S. Navy is preparing new guidelines for pilots on how to report sightings of UFOs. The military reports there have been strange sightings of unauthorized or unidentified aircraft over its airspace in recent years, though no confirmed encounters with anybody from some other place. But the Navy is updating its process so that investigators can look into each individual report. Our national security correspondent Jennifer Griffin is live at the Pentagon. Hey, Jen.
Hi, Shep. Well, the Pentagon closed its office that dealt with UFO sightings in 2012 when Congress, in essence, stopped funding it. That office was called the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Now, after a series of unusual encounters by Navy jets, like this one in 2017, showing an F-18 Super Hornet encountering an unidentified object, the Navy has decided it needs to codify how its sailors and pilots record such unexplained events in case these flying objects are in fact some kind of advanced aircraft sent by the Russians or Chinese to spy on the U.S. military. In essence, the U.S. Navy and Pentagon are trying to destigmatize reporting what they call unexplained aerial phenomena. Today, the Navy issued a statement, quote, "The Navy is updating and formalizing the process by which reports of any such suspected incursions can be made to the cognizant authorities. A new message to the fleet that will detail the steps for reporting is in draft. In response to requests for information from congressional members and staff, Navy officials have provided a series of briefings by senior naval intelligence officials as well as aviators who reported hazards to aviation safety." For many years, it was considered a career ender to report these unexplained encounters, so many military personnel had downplayed them, Shep.
Is there anything to the timing of this?
Well, since 2014, there have been an increasing number of encounters. Most of them are suspected drones. After the 2017 F-18 incident and the release of this Navy video showing the pilot's reaction to the strange aerial encounter, the Pentagon established an office inside the Defense Intelligence Agency to study these recent phenomena at the urging of several U.S. senators who set aside $25 million for the new office. Among the incidents closely studied was an aerial incursion involving the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier strike group, which lasted several days and involved what pilots described as aircraft that flew in a manner that defied physics.
So now that Lou Elizondo and TTSA leaked footage, the DoD has instituted new reporting guidelines pertaining to the sightings of UFOs by members of the military. Now, from the outside, it may seem like they're concerned about the possible threat, but in my opinion, this is truly just a way to lock down UFO sightings. You see, now if members of our military spot UFOs, they need to report them to the Pentagon and remain silent. That means they can't show them to the public. So any military member who leaks information to the public could potentially be prosecuted. I truly feel like the Pentagon doesn't want another person to leak footage like Lou Elizondo did. I wonder why. Anyhow, at this point, everybody was talking about the sightings once again.
The U.S. Navy is giving new guidance for reporting unidentified flying objects, better known as UFOs.
The New York Times reported that during the summer of 2014 through early spring 2015, sightings were nearly a daily occurrence.
You have objects that are doing things, maneuvering in ways without any obvious sign of propulsion.
Last month, the Navy announced it was establishing new classified guidelines for how its pilots report unidentified aerial phenomena. Doing so in the past was considered a career ender. Navy Commander David Fravor remembers the first time he saw one in 2004 flying off San Diego.
Both airplanes see a disturbance in the water and a white 40-foot long tic-tac shaped object just hovering above the water. Going forward, back, left, right. There's no rotor wash, there's no wings, nothing.
Some say the sightings began after the Navy installed a new radar system, an upgrade from 1980s era radar. Others say they could be enemy spy drones or a classified program operated by the U.S. government, or weather balloons like the ones found in Roswell, New Mexico, which launched a whole generation of UFO sightings. Commercial pilots have been reporting unidentified flying objects for years.
I don't know what it was. It wasn't an airplane. Yeah, something just passed over. I don't know what it was.
Funding for the Pentagon's Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program ended in 2012, but now there is new secret guidance about how military pilots should report these phenomena.
Well, here's a kind of amazing fact that should be on the front page of every paper. A secret Department of Defense program paid for researchers to run psychological evaluations on people who said they'd encountered UFOs. Apparently, warehouses were rented. It sounds kooky, but this is actually being reported by the New York Times, where metal from downed UFOs could be stored. What? When did that happen and why did nobody tell us? We'll tell you what we know after the break. Well, a lot of people believe that there might be life on other planets. Apparently, a lot of people who do work in the U.S. government, which secretly over the years, we now learned, has spent millions on a program that investigated UFO reports. So what did they find, and does that program still exist? We asked Fox News headlines Brett Larson to explore that question for us. He joins us tonight with the outcome. Hey, Brett.
Hey, Tucker. Yes, we have fearlessly reported on previous reports of UFO sightings, or what the military sometimes calls unexplained aerial phenomena. Detailed by Navy pilots and other members of the military. Now, it's a situation that the Pentagon piqued the world's interest in when they released some declassified documents that made it clear the government is keeping an eye on the skies and potential UFOs a bit closer than anyone would have expected. Now, that release included the now infamous video from 2017 of what is clearly some kind of flying object that honestly does not match any of the physics I remember learning about or any aircraft design any of us have ever seen outside of science fiction. But the story actually got a little more interesting. It turns out former U.S. Senator Harry Reid of Nevada put together a multi-million-dollar investigation into the Pentagon's UFO files, and it included a real-life Fox Mulder.
Fox Mulder? Nah, man. Lou Elizondo is no David Duchovny, and Tom DeLonge is definitely no Gillian Anderson.
And it included a real-life Fox Mulder, tasked with cataloging not just those documents related to UFO reports, but also to collect actual debris. In fact, a company was hired to modify buildings in Las Vegas to store metal alloys and other materials that were reportedly from sites where these unexplained events happened. Now, people who have had encounters have been tested for any physical changes. Military personnel were interviewed about what they saw. Now, we know what some of them saw from the 2017 video captured over the Pacific, when multiple military officers confirmed this mysterious sighting, including pilots and radar technicians. But the program to catalog then reveal to the public what was found has been canceled. Tracking UFOs by the military isn't stopping. In fact, they're going to keep it for a simple reason. The military needs to know who is doing this and what their intent is. Now, unfortunately, this means we may not get to see those detailed reports, those mind-blowing videos, or as one of the pilots said of something seen out his window, truly radical technology. All the data they collect may simply end up in a chart that shows an uptick in sightings and their locations as we all collectively wait for those documents to be declassified.
So we just keep getting new confirmation each and every day about these programs, but nobody is mentioning the patent for the TR3B. It's pretty suspicious to me. Some of these people have to know about it, right? Well, in any case, it seems like all this constant media attention sparked the curiosity of some of the more well-known scientific celebrities, like Bill Nye the Science Guy, for example.
I sat down with Bill Nye the Science Guy to talk about climate change coverage and UFOs. Let's talk about space. The New York Times has been writing about Navy pilots experiencing these strange circumstances in the air, these unidentified flying objects, UFOs. It's got a lot of people on social media talking about aliens this week. Where do you come down on this?
That one part of the government doesn't tell the other part of the government what they're doing. And by the government, I'm talking about the military. If the Naval Reconnaissance Office is messing around with some airborne gizmo, they don't tell the Air Force what they're doing. They certainly don't tell the other parts of the Navy what they're doing. And I worked with guys that went to Groom Lake every day, or regularly. Area 51, this Air Force base in Nevada, where these planes especially, are developed. They're secret. So I wouldn't be surprised if they observe some secret test that nobody wants to talk about, and the story's being exaggerated now.
So these are UFOs because the people seeing them don't know how to identify them.
Yeah.
But they're not extraterrestrial life. That's what your gut tells you.
Well, almost certainly not.
Why almost certainly not?
Because extraordinary claims. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. So if an alien shows up, I'm all for it, man. Let's go. But it's probably one part of the military not telling the other part of the military what they're up to for a good reason.
I like Bill's explanation for a vast majority of UFO sightings, that they are secret military technology, but I think that a small number of these sightings have to be craft or organisms from another world. It's entirely plausible, at least in my opinion. Yet, the question still remains, if this is secret military technology, where did they get it from? I really don't know. Anyhow, it was June 2019 before Capitol Hill first took notice of the UFO phenomenon and a few politicians began to comment.
What concern should we be about the briefing that you received on UFOs? Is that a concern that for pilots? Is there anything you can mention to us about that?
Well, I think some of the press reports are accurate. I think people are taking this issue much more seriously, and I'm not going to get into any of the contents of the briefing. It was a classified briefing, but what I think one of the key takeaways I'd have is that the military and others are taking this issue seriously, which I think in previous generations may not have been the case.
You and I, we know we disagree about that, but we have a whole day ahead to go on this. Before we go, one of the things you have as president is the access to all the information in the world, all the mysteries out there. And I was just struck in the last couple of weeks, we're reading more and more reports of Navy pilots seeing lots and lots of UFOs. Have you been briefed on that? What do you make of it?
I have. I think it's probably, I want them to think whatever they think. They do say, I mean, I've seen and I've read and I've heard, and I did have one very brief meeting on it, but people are saying they're seeing UFOs. Do I believe it? Not particularly.
Good afternoon. I'm Nick Burns, Executive Director of the Aspen Security Forum. It's a pleasure to welcome Admiral Phil Davidson, who's commander of our Indo-Pacific Command. Let's take a question from over here. Yes, right here.
Numerous senior pilots from the Navy have been reporting significant UFO activity.
You take questions on UFOs, Admiral?
There's a reporting process for that and an office that handles that. And it was happening over a pretty finite period of time several years ago. I'll leave it at that.
Let's go from the left wing of the audience to the right wing, over here. All the way in the back.
So the Senate Intelligence Oversight Committee believes in UFOs and is being briefed on them. The president doesn't particularly believe in them, but he said he would trust our pilots. And an admiral in charge of the Indo-Pacific Command laughs off the question and says that the office that handles UFO sightings was shut down years ago. Yeah, right. I'm beginning to really think that there always was a UFO program at the Pentagon, but that they shut it down and restart it every few years to keep it secret and compartmentalized. I mean, we had a blue book, now we have an ATIP. Anyhow, September 2019 brought us something fresh to ufology finally. It was the Storm Area 51 raid in the desert.
The Lincoln County, Nevada Sheriff's Office will be in charge of keeping the peace during the upcoming Storm Area 51 event. Have you heard about this? Should participants commit any type of felony, they could find themselves locked up in the small town of Pioche. That's the county seat. Denise Roche with our sister station KSNV in Las Vegas takes a look at these accommodations.
I was born and raised in Lincoln County, and I've been with the Sheriff's Office for 30 years.
Lincoln County Sheriff Kerry Lee says he's beefing up staff for the Facebook-inspired event. While Area 51 is a good hour-and-a-half drive from Pioche, this is where the detention center is.
This is where the inmates come to be booked.
The sheriff giving us a tour of the 125-bed facility. Now, this cell is about 10 by 20, and it's not exactly a comfortable stay. But if people do really press their luck out at Area 51, this is exactly where they'll end up. Steel bunks, stainless steel toilet, a metal bench, and a view of not much.
They could end up here in Pioche, absolutely. I mean, it's trespassing, and it'd be the same as trespassing at any other military facility. Then Nellis Air Force Base, you trespass on Nellis Air Force Base, what happens? You know, they're probably going to go to jail.
Lee says it's also possible a processing center will be set up right outside of Area 51. And he has no issue with people coming out to take pictures and stare up at the sky. It's the word storming that draws his attention.
Now, the problem with this event is it is impossible to know what to plan for. Will 50 people show up, 500, 5,000? There's no way to nail down an exact number. But rest assured, here in Lincoln County, law enforcement will be ready.
The medical side of it, the garbage side of it, the sanitation side. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of things to think about, let alone the law enforcement side that the county is thinking about how they're going to deal with.
Including campers dealing with the heat, rattlesnakes, and scorpions.
Looks like fun, doesn't it? And coming up in about an hour, we're going to go live to Nevada, where our sister station, KSNV, has a preview of the Storm Area 51 event. Now, we've all seen images of purported UFOs, some of them very convincing, others obvious hoaxes. This one apparently is not a hoax. In fact, the U.S. Navy confirmed it's the real deal, although officials say they don't know what the mysterious object is. The footage is from 2015, including audio from U.S. fighter pilots trying to understand what they're seeing. Can't hear that right now, though. According to Navy spokesman, their transparency with the footage is meant to encourage trainees to report unidentified aerial phenomena.
97.1 Amp Radio, thank you for hanging out with us. Do you believe UFOs are real? Do they exist? Chelsea?
Definitely.
Josh?
100%.
I want to hear your guys' reasoning. But first, if you don't believe, what do you say about this? Let's have ABC 7 report what just got announced by the U.S. Navy.
Now at 11, a stunning admission by the U.S. Navy. UFOs are for real. You may remember.
They're not real. They're faux real.
Oh, real for real.
Navy UFOs are for real. You may remember these videos from U.S. Navy pilots that came to light earlier this year. They show objects accelerating to hypersonic speed and making movements described as beyond the physical abilities of a human crew. Today, the Navy confirmed it has no idea what those objects are and officially considers them unidentified aerial phenomena.
And so once again, the mainstream media is all over the UFO phenomenon. Tom DeLonge even had this to say while he was touring with Angels and Airwaves, a To the Stars Academy-owned rock band.
And I'm one of the most misunderstood dudes on Earth. A lot of people go, man, this guy's crazy. What is he doing? Why would he not want to play in a giant band? And what is he going around chasing little green men? Well, the U.S. Navy just said Tom DeLonge's right, didn't they?
Well, since TTSA owns Angels and Airwaves, I guess it wouldn't be too hard to understand a $37 million deficit. I mean, hey, if I had to foot the bill for a rock star tour but only had a local bar turnout, I'd probably run a deficit too. Wow. Okay.
We've all supposedly seen this video that it's of hard to explain unidentified flying objects. Is it clever editing, or maybe some object that we'll find out after the fact? Usually we find out these things, but it's these three videos corresponding and the corresponding audio from military pilots that have really stirred the X-Files pot. Take a listen. When you have legitimate military aviators captured on flight recorders fueling the UFO fire, then the conversation gets really interesting, and that's where we pick things up with a 25-year Navy vet, Brian Sunshine Sinclair. Brian, a graduate of the Naval Academy with a degree in aerospace engineering. Okay. The Navy confirming that the video, that sequence of videos that we saw, were legitimately unidentified flying phenomenon. When you see that, when the Navy confirms that, yeah, we don't know what that is, what does that tell you?
Well, firstly, let's back up a little bit. Yeah, that term UFO, Lauren alluded to it earlier, and there's a lot of kind of pop culture baggage that comes along with that. Little green men, Area 51, flying saucers, all that stuff. So what you got here is a paradigm shift, okay? So you don't want to have pilots being cajoled, made fun of, if you will, for reporting a UFO, like, oh, Sunshine's been sipping a little too much and now he's seeing unidentified things. So they're kind of more formalizing it right now. So, and the term they use now, you're right, is unidentified aerial phenomenon, or UAP.
All right, so we're gonna roll that video again if we could. I guess the characteristics of its sharp turns, the change in altitudes. Why is it always a saucer type? That looks like a flying mouse to me right there. So
So this one, though, is this is the Tic Tac, right?
Yeah.
And so there are a couple naysayers out there. They're going to say that the equipment's not working or they have inexperienced air crew. I'm going to say no to both of those. So I've been flying for about 15 years, so 2,800 hours, which is just day in and day out for 15 years. I've used this forward-looking infrared camera, which you see here on display, many, many times. Very comfortable with it and all the symbology associated. And to me, that is a very, very well-working, well-tuned infrared device right there.
All right, so it's working.
Yeah.
So you're in the cockpit, you're seeing this, what are you saying?
Same thing, holy cow. Now, I'm not saying this on the radio, I'm saying this to the guy in the back, which is the recording you hear.
Right.
I'm like, holy cow, what is this? I have no clue. So, and it's, but also these guys are very experienced. For example, the Dave Fravor, if you heard, so he was the skipper of VFA 41 back in 2004. And this is off the coast of San Diego here, you know, that Tic Tac video, if you will. So he's very well experienced. He knows what's going on. It's day. He's got a guy in the back seat. He's got another airplane with him with another 2 guys. So you got 4 guys out there. So between the 4 of them, they can kind of figure out what's going on.
All right, so we pulled some video of some generic UFOs. I'm curious. You've spent a lot of time either with yourself up 40,000 feet above or with a buddy.
Yeah.
How many strange, weird things have you seen?
Honestly, none. Yeah, none at all. So, and usually what will happen is a lot of these can be dismissed as kind of illusions. So think of low light conditions, kind of sunset or maybe darkness, pure darkness, and you'll have exoatmospheric or stuff coming in from space, getting burned up in the atmosphere can be one of them. But now also, as you start to lose your reference points as it gets darker, right, for the human body, there's a lot of illusions that occur. So those illusions could be also predicated upon weather balloons, as an example. I've seen that out there. Low light conditions, so sunset, let's say, so I'm down low, it's dark, but up high, it's still light. Weather balloon, very reflective, stationary, big object, it acts as a reflector. So sometimes you see a stationary light, it doesn't show up on the radar, or maybe it does, but it's not moving. And eventually we figured out that it was a weather balloon. That's just one example.
As you can see by this interview, by this time, people are becoming accustomed to talking about UFOs as a part of daily life. It's no surprise that a few months later, politicians would jump on the bandwagon and try to cash in.
Thank you. We have 2 traditional questions, but you already answered that.
I did? What are those?
Well, one was...
What was it?
Oh, well, it was about David Fravor, the pilot, the pilot who saw the UFO in 2004, allegedly. He's from New Hampshire, and that's why I asked. I didn't give you the context last time.
Well, if you got the question in, it's fine.
Yeah.
And you signed our refrigerator. You want to sign it again?
I did that too. I see my signature.
Yeah.
I don't
there when you were the first one.
Yeah, I don't want to double up.
All right. So this is our last question. So I fully support what you said to Joe Rogan about revealing the truth on UFOs revealing the truth on UFOs if you got in. You told Joe Rogan that, and I think that would be great if we got the skinny on that.
My wife would never forgive me if I did not.
But I was wondering, these objects that the pilots are seeing, are allegedly seeing,
and that the Navy has reported,
including David Fravor from New Hampshire. Yeah, I was just wondering if you think they might have the key to some green technology or something to help.
Let's not jump the gun. You were assuming. Look, I think I'm not sure if we're on the same thing here, but there's some articles recently that Navy pilots, I think, had spotted these things. I could not explain them. Right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly.
The Tic Tac.
Yeah.
All right, and I think, of course, we have to explore that and look at that if it is true. If it, don't quote me. Sanders believes in, please don't. If otherwise, it is true. Yeah, of course. I mean, they presumably are coming from a rather long distance away, right?
Yeah.
Somehow they're able to get here, so, yeah.
Well, thanks for writing our lead.
And so for the next few months, everybody was talking about Then in April, we get more UFOs when our comrades over at Russia Today had more interesting news for us.
Here's this story that seems to come out of nowhere. I'm Rick Sanchez. Welcome back, by the way. So the Pentagon, as aforementioned, has just released some short video footage of not bombs, not rockets going off, not, accusations against another country. It's something much more interesting, something that involves what appears to be UFOs. It's video of a UFO of some type. The Pentagon refers to them as UAPs. That's an unidentified aerial phenomenon out of nowhere. I'm Rick Sanchez. Welcome back, by the way. So the Pentagon, as aforementioned, has just released some short video footage of not bombs, not rockets going off, not, accusations against another country. It's something much more interesting, something that involves what appears to be UFOs. It's video of a UFO of some type. The Pentagon refers to them as UAPs. That's an unidentified aerial phenomenon. They just released this a few hours ago. We picked up on it. Here it is. Take a look at it. All right. So as we're looking at these pictures, I want to bring in our next guest. He is the former commander of the International Space Station, Leroy Chow. There's a private organization that had these video, had originally put them out. The Pentagon kind of poo-pooed the whole thing. Now, apparently, the Pentagon says, okay, fine, we'll put them out and sanction them as official Pentagon videos that remain unexplained. So I turn to you, Leroy. Do you have an explanation?
Well, my hunch, of course I don't know, but my hunch is that these aircraft or, aerocraft are some kind of secret military program that the Navy and or Air Force may or may not know about. Left hand doesn't always know what the right hand's doing. And so, they're probably captured video from fighter aircraft that have seen or captured some of these aircraft doing flight tests. And so we just don't know what it is, but I highly doubt it's from another planet or aliens, things like that. In the past, this is what it's always turned out to be. It's always turned out to be a secret military program that one side or another doesn't necessarily know about.
Does that match this? Because I'm going to read you what some guy named Luis Elizondo, he's the former head of the classified program, he tells CNN the following: there's very compelling evidence that we may not be alone. He goes on to say, in quotes, these aircraft, we'll call them aircraft, are displaying characteristics that are not currently within the U.S. inventory nor any other foreign inventory that we are aware of. What do you make of that?
Well, sure. I mean, there's always the possibility, and I think it's infinitesimally small possibility, that these are alien spacecraft. Because in the past, I remember John Young, very famous astronaut, I was flying with him one day and he described an incident back in the 1960s where he looked up and he saw a series of puffs very high in the sky, some kind of vehicle traveling extremely fast, probably hypersonic. He was flying a supersonic aircraft himself. And of course, it was probably a pulse jet. And we had pulse jet technology back in the 60s that nobody knew about. So who knows what technology we have today that the public and even some of the specialists don't know about.
How long were you up there as head of the International Space Station?
I was the commander of the station for 6.5 months, and all told, over my 4 missions, I spent a little over 229 days in space.
Did you see anything weird?
Oh yeah, I saw plenty weird over my missions, absolutely. I remember on my very last spacewalk while I was aboard the space station, we were doing a Russian spacewalk and we were in that twilight between transitioning from nighttime to daytime. And during that time, murky, I don't know what you're looking at, and I saw like 4, and I called out to my Russian crewmate in Russian. I asked, hey, Saljan, did you see those lights? Did you see those lights fly by? And he was facing the other way, so he didn't see it. And then we went into sunlight and they were gone. And at the time, I didn't think they were any kind of UFO. I thought it was probably some kind of military satellite constellation. And then, so the internet being what it is, instantly there were all these conspiracy theorists saying that I had seen UFOs and flying saucers. But then just as quickly, people knew exactly what time I made that transmission. They were able to figure out exactly where the station was at that time. And it turns out we were right off the coast of South America, and there was a line of fishing boats using very bright lights to attract squid. And so that's what it was. And it was the rotation of the Earth that made it look like it was flying.
So just to quote you correctly then, what you're saying is, yes, they may be unidentified, yes, they may be weird, these things that we are seeing in these videos, but they very well may be explained by something the Pentagon is working on that they can't tell us yet what it is.
Right, exactly. And the fact that they released them because they're already out there. So rather than fuel more speculation, okay, here are the UFO videos. But we're not going to tell you what they are.
And Russia wasn't the only foreign country talking about UFOs at this point. Other countries had jumped on the old bandwagon as well.
Before we go, a story from the U.S. The Pentagon has weighed in on an enduring mystery. It's released 3 unclassified videos showing what appear to be unidentified flying objects, or UFOs.
Vi ska avsluta här med spektakulära filmer som USAs försvarsdepartement Pentagon nu släppt på misstänkta Ufos.
Medios locales reportaron que tras la publicación de videos de objetos voladores no identificados por parte del Pentágono, el Ministerio de Defensa de Japón alista un protocolo en caso de avistamiento.
En este tiempo de COVID, el Pentágono acaba de afirmar que unos videos grabados en 2005.
Everybody was talking about this official footage now. UFOs for everyone. Woohoo! And so now everybody was getting in on the gag, including comedians.
No. I said UFO. Yeah, I have proof. Oh, why do they always hang up on me? Me, a self-appointed expert in the field of UFO. Well, they won't be laughing when they see this video of an actual UFO.
Everybody seemed to have an opinion and be an expert on UFOs all of a sudden. So the talk show rags had to go back and dust off old Lou Elizondo one more time.
Welcome back to tonight's special. How much does the U.S. government actually know about UFO sightings? We may finally be able to find out. I'm not kidding. This week, the Senate Intelligence Committee voted to require the Pentagon to produce a UFO report as part of the latest defense authorization bill. Luis Elizondo is a former military intelligence official and currently works with the Stars Academy and the History Channel, and he joins us now. Luis, if the Senate gets what they want, what will they get?
Well, thanks, Brian, for having me. I think this is a historical moment in our country for many reasons. I think it's fair to say this is certainly a nonpartisan issue. You have, thanks to the courage of Senator Marco Rubio, but others before him, such as Harry Reid and Stevens and Inouye. I think if the Senate is successful in getting what they want, they are going to get actual hard data as to the capabilities of these incursions into our airspace and the airspace of where we have combat vehicles and controlled, if you will. Think of a combat theater where we have aircraft operating. Hopefully we can get a better understanding of what's going on here. These things seem to appear and operate without impunity, both here in the United States and overseas, where our brave men and women are in uniform. And hopefully we'll be able to finally piece together.
Luis, how do you know?
Well, because I was part of a program for about 10 years back in the Pentagon called ATIP. I ran that program with several colleagues of mine, and it was an interagency organization very much like this task force that you are seeing right now that's being proposed in this bill.
What's the most intriguing thing that we'll get from it if the Senate Intelligence Committee gets what you know?
Well, I think you're going to get hopefully you're going to get an unclassified report. And for the first time, average Americans are going to get a chance to see the very same data that has been locked away in if you will, in classified briefings and whatnot, and hopefully see the light of day for once.
Now, I consider myself an average American. Can you tell me what it says since you were part of the unit?
Well, unfortunately, I'm not employed by the U.S. government anymore, and I am still bound by my non-disclosure agreements, my NDAs. I still have a security clearance. So that's really a conversation that the U.S. government's going to have, the executive branch with the legislative branch, and then finally decide what they think is appropriate for the American people. But I think what I can say is that data is very compelling. And when you look at these vehicles and what they're able to do, you very quickly realize that this is probably not something in our own inventory.
Dang, Lou ain't looking so good nowadays. Maybe he needs a vacation. Anyhow, this is where things get really interesting. On July 23rd, the New York Times published this article. No longer in shadows, Pentagon's UFO unit will make some findings public. In the article, they quoted former Senator Harry Reid as saying that UFOs had crashed and were recovered, and that materials from these crashes had secretly been studied for decades. Wait a minute, that's awesome news. Only the very next day, they had to retract the story and say that Mr. Reid did not say that UFOs had crashed and were recovered, and that recovered materials had actually not been studied for decades. Wait, what? Okay, whatever, guys. Seriously. Ugh. Well, if there's nothing new to add, I guess the mainstream media's got to pull out all the old familiar faces once again.
Well, a secretive Pentagon unit that has been studying unidentified flying objects for decades is now divulging some of its secrets, and it turns out some of them are a big deal. A retired naval aviator who has seen unidentified flying objects joins us next. Much of the media have mocked the existence of unidentified flying objects. The U.S. Pentagon has been studying this subject for quite a long time, and apparently will soon release some of its findings, which remain classified. According to a new report in the New York Times, the U.S. government may have physical evidence of, and we're quoting, off-world vehicles not made on this Earth. The government has also released footage of UFO sightings, including a 2004 encounter recorded from an advanced Navy fighter jet. Commander David Fravor is a retired naval aviator who once saw something he could not explain, that science can't explain. We're honored to have him on tonight. Mr. Fravor, thanks so much for coming on. So, tell us if you think this is being misinterpreted. According to the New York Times, the U.S. government has physical evidence of some sort of vehicle made not on this Earth. Is it what it sounds like?
Well, it sounds that way to me, Tucker. I just, I never want to speculate what the government truly has, but I would say there's stuff out there. I mean, the four of us that chased the Tic Tac in 2004 have attested to it multiple times that what we saw exceeded anything that we had in our inventory, far superior to the airplanes that we were flying in at the time they were brand new. So I would say, yes, there's something out there, and hopefully the government does have stuff.
Yep, look, same old song and dance there. Hell, even Fravor looks a little bit bored. This whole thing seems staged to me, or scripted, and it feels like people are just going through the motions at this point. See, everyone has heard of the videos, and everybody's talking about UFOs and aliens.
CBS 4's Jim DeFede spoke to Senator Rubio.
Jim, perhaps on a much lighter note, Senator Rubio wants naval intelligence to prepare a public report on UFOs. What's that all about?
So, as the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Rubio, very quietly, just about a month or so ago, attached into a bill that's working its way through the Senate, this idea of wanting to know some of the aeronautical, differences that we're sort of seeing. What we call UFOs, he doesn't want to use that term, the Navy doesn't use that term, but he says there are objects flying over military bases, encountering civilian airliners, encountering military jets, that they just cannot explain these phenomena. And he wants to know, now, is it from another galaxy? Is it from China? These are the questions that he's trying to answer. And he says there's no reason to keep this information classified. He wants the Office of Naval Intelligence to issue a report, go through everything, release it publicly, and let's try to get some answers. So, for those old fans of the old TV series, he believes the truth is out there.
Are we alone? No, look, here's the interesting thing for me about all this, and the reason why I think it's an important topic, okay? And that is, we have things flying over our military bases and places where we're conducting military exercises, and we don't know what it is, and it isn't ours. So That's a legitimate question to ask. I would say that, frankly, that if it's something of outside this planet, that might actually be better than the fact that we've seen some technological leap on behalf of the Chinese or the Russians or some other adversary that allows them to conduct this sort of activity. But the bottom line is, if there are things flying over your military bases and you don't know what they are because they're not yours, and they exhibit potentially technologies that you don't have at your own disposal, that to me is a national security risk and one that we should be looking into. And so that's the premise I begin with.
Let's clear this up. Who would be looking into this, and they would be generating some sort of a publicly available report on, you're not using the phrase unidentified flying objects, you have another euphemism for it, unidentified aerial phenomenon, which is not.
I didn't come up with that. That's the one that the military uses internally, and ultimately, that's the one we used. And what we're saying, so the Office of Naval Intelligence, this has impacted the Navy for the most part. I've seen reports on this now for the better part of a decade. Other countries have had similar reports, and so. But for our perspective is, there is someone flying in the airspace that no one else is allowed to fly in, and we don't know who it is, and it isn't something we have. We need to know what that is. I mean, that's in my mind. I mean, I don't understand why we wouldn't want to know what it is. Maybe there's a completely sort of boring explanation for it, but we need to find out. And so that's really what we're asking about, and we're asking them to make public as much as possible that information. None of that really fits into the mold of classified per se.
All right, but what's your gut? Are we alone in the universe, or is there something else out there?
I don't have a gut feeling about it because it's a phenomenon. It's unexplained. I just want to know what it is, and if we can't determine what it is, then that's a fact point we need to take into account. I wouldn't venture to speculate beyond that.
Here's the deal. For more than a decade, the Pentagon's UFO program has only been discussed in classified briefings, but now the Defense Department will release some of their findings every 6 months. The Office of Naval Intelligence released a report to a Senate committee outlining spending on the UFO program called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force. According to the report, the unit is tasked with standardizing the collection and reporting on sightings of unexplained aerial vehicles. Unexplained aerial vehicles doesn't have quite the same ring as a UFO. UAV. But
still, though, are they admitting to what we've all known?
That's got to be an admission, right?
The New York Times ran a story a couple days ago, and if it's said to be believed, is that the Pentagon essentially said that those images that we were showing you are off-world vehicles that were not made on this Earth. So
that is the quote.
Just as Joe Rogan, who I'm not one to quote ever, said, 2020 is just getting started. Yes. He has no idea.
Even the president had more to say.
Good evening, everybody. We'll be talking with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, here in just moments, live. I understand the President is on the phone now, and I want to go to him straight away. Mr. President, we're delighted to have you with us on the broadcast, and we hope that you can stay with us a while to go through all of these issues. Your administration, you promised would be transparent, and you have done your level best to do that. Despite the deep state's efforts to bury everything about as deeply as they could. But I've got one question as we conclude here, because actually a lot of my friends are very concerned about what the federal government is doing when it comes to UFOs. So if I could just ask you, are you going to commit more resources to exploring UFOs and open the documents to the public?
Well, I think you're probably in this country, you're the UFO expert. So I'm going to be totally guided by the great Lou Dobbs, and I will tell you that I'll do whatever you ask me to do, including total transparency. And I got to tell you, there's probably some pretty good transparency needed there. There's no doubt about that.
Well, Mr. President, I couldn't have asked for a better answer. Thank you so much, and I'll be calling your office soon to get that underway. It's been great talking with you, sir, and we appreciate your time, Mr. President. Great to have you with us.
It's my
President
great
Donald
honor.
Trump.
You've done a fantastic job.
Thank you, sir.
Lou. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you for the kind words. Thank you, Mr. President.
So there you have it, folks. 3 years of disclosure in about 90 minutes. Or as close as I could get it. And I'd just like to go over a few things here with you. First, let's talk about government UFO programs for a minute.
The Air Force formed Project Blue Book for three basic purposes. First, to determine that there was no threat to our national security. Second, to preclude technological surprise. And third, and probably most important, to prove the existence of UFOs.
It's not a drone. It's not something that we can easily say, oh, that's an airplane.
Luis Elizondo ran the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program.
The Office of Naval Intelligence released a report to a Senate committee outlining spending on the UFO program called the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force.
In 1947, Project Sign was formed by general twinning to study UFOs. It ran until 1949. Then from 1949 to 1951, Project Grudge did the same exact thing. Then from 1952 to 1969, the now infamous Project Blue Book was the federal government's UFO program. At the end of Blue Book, they stated that the program was closing and that reports of UFO sightings would be handled by the standard reporting procedure for the Air Force. What that procedure was and where those reports went has yet to be determined. And so from the end of Project Blue Book in 1969 all the way up until 2003, we officially have no UFO reporting programs. In fact, in 2003, the Air Force officially stated that after Project Blue Book, there was no significant UFO sightings and that no other programs were in place to study the UFO phenomenon. However, if we skip ahead to 2007, we learn that the Pentagon actually had a program called ATIP that ran until 2012. And then in 2017, the UAP Task Force was formed to investigate the UFO phenomenon, which is presumably still operational. And so going back all the way to 1947, the United States Department of Defense had a great interest in the UFO phenomenon. Then, supposedly, all of a sudden in 1969, they claimed to have stopped the programs completely, at least publicly. Why was that? I have an idea.
But you see, Wendy, by the time Project Blue Book was finished, after 21 years, I think Alan Hynek had come to hate the Air Force. I think the Air Force had come to hate Alan Hynek. Alan Hynek came to recognize that UFOs represented a veritable scientific mystery. And he wanted to solve this mystery. For the joy to solve the mystery, the Air Force wanted him to give simple answers for UFO cases that they provided. And they provided for the most part.
So from 1969 to 2007, the government apparently has no interest in UFOs. Well, except for this guy, President Carter, who once saw a UFO. Oh, and this guy, President Kennedy, who some people believe was assassinated to keep him from disclosing UFOs. Oh, and there's even this guy, President Ronald Reagan, who had a strange fixation on UFOs and aliens.
In our obsession with antagonisms of the moment, we often forget how much unites all the members of humanity. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. There was a threat to this world from some other species from another planet. What if all of us in the world discovered that we were threatened by a power from outer space, from another planet? And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our peoples than war and the threat of war?
But yeah, you know, for close to 40 years, the government officially had no interest in UFOs. Yeah, right. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if the government had several UFO programs over the years that they closed down and reopened under new names with new personnel. It just astonishes me that they would expect us to believe that the DoD simply stopped investigating UFOs at any time. I just don't buy it. What do you guys think? Here's something else that I noticed. The timing of all this seems too perfect. Just a few weeks before the US Navy's patents are processed, TTSA is formally launched. It's almost like it's a part of some big advertising campaign.
First transparent partnership of its kind between the fields of aerospace engineering, science, and cinematic entertainment. A collaboration with global citizens to explore the outer edges of conventional thinking, targeting the mysteries of the universe.
Then, as the patents are processed and publicly announced, we have more media hype and an oversaturation of UFO culture. It's all so convenient, and it just seems scripted to me. I've never been more convinced that Lou Elizondo is some form of a misinformation agent and part of a plan. What that plan is, I have no idea. Maybe the USA and some of our allies had to keep a secret agreement to keep this technology classified. And maybe that agreement is set to expire soon. I don't know. Or maybe the USA was concerned that another country might have developed the technology as well. So they filed for the patents so that they could sue anyone who uses it and seize American assets. I really don't know. Either one of these theories fits the facts. What do you guys think about all this? Do you think TTSA and Lou Elizondo are part of some misinformation campaign? Do you think the US Navy has secretly had a TR3B for years? Do you think it's all just coincidental? Let me know in the comments section below, and if you like this video, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and ring that bell. That way you'll get all the notifications when the latest videos come out. Well guys, for now, that's all I have on Mainstream Disclosure for the last few years. Thank you all for joining me here today. I'll catch y'all later. As always, this has been Manny at Area 503, and I wish you all the best until we meet again. And I am out of here to continue my search for universal truth.